Hello and welcome to another Pygame tutorial. In today's video we're going to be creating the game Mastermind. Mastermind is a board game that was created in the 70s and I believe is still very popular today. And the game is one player is the code maker, which in this case is going to be the computer, and the other player is the code breaker, which is us. The computer will generate a secret code which consists on a sequence of color pins. So it's going to be a sequence of 4 of these colors here, and it will be hidden from us. And our objective is to crack that code within a limited number of attempts. Okay, so in this case it's going to be 10 attempts. The code is going to be on the top here. It's going to be hidden from us. Once we try all of our attempts and we still don't figure out the codes, it's going to reveal the code for us. If we do find out the code, it will also reveal the code to us, showing it's the correct one. So to play this, we basically select a color down here, and then there is this green rectangle. So that's the row that we need to place. So we start at the bottom, so you can click on a color, and then you can place the pegs in there, or the pins in there. You can also change the color if you have to, and then once you made your colors down here, you press the enter key, and then the computer will give us a feedback. Okay, so this side here is the computer's feedback. So if we see white dots like this, so there's 4, right? 1 for each spot, 1 for each column. If we see a white dot, that means one of these colors, they are correct, but they are not in the correct spot. Okay, so in this case we see 2 white dots. 2 of these colors here, they are correct, and 2 are not, but they are not in the correct spot. Okay, I'll just put some random colors in here again. I want to get to see the red one, because if we see a red spot, okay, I cannot get the red one. If we see a red one, that means one of these colors, they are correct and they are in the correct spot. Okay, so that's how, based on this feedback, that's how we're going to try to crack this code up here. So let me just give you a quick demonstration. I'm just gonna play how I usually play. Okay, so we have it here. I usually always start putting all the same colors and then I press enter. So we didn't get any feedback in here, so that means there's no red on the secret codes. Let's try all the green. There's no green. Let's try all the blue. Oh, there's no blue. Let's try all the yellow. Okay, see, that's the red one in there. So it means there is a yellow and one of these are in the correct place. So I'm gonna put the yellow there, and then I'm gonna fill this with pink. Right? Now we know that there is a yellow and also pink, but the yellow is not in here, or the pink is not in any of these 3. So I know that the pink is gonna be in here, but the yellow, I'm not sure yet. So I'm just gonna try the second one, and then we're gonna go with orange. Right? So we got the same here, okay, but now we have a red one. I assume is the pink because it's not in here, so it has to be the first one. So we don't have a orange, so the pink still's there. The yellow I'm gonna try on this side here, and then the next color is here is black. Okay, now we do have those 3 colors and they are all in the same place. So I'm assuming that pink is there, and I'm gonna guess that the yellow is there as well because we have a red. Now the black can be in either of these spots. We're going to try here first, and then we're gonna try white in there. Right, so now we got red and red, which I assume is the pink and the yellow, but these 2, they are in the opposite place. So we end attempt 9, so we still have 2 more. So let's try just to reverse the pink, the white and the black. And that's it. We cracked the code. And the code is shown on the top here. So it's a very simple code. It's a very simple game. All right, so let's get started. So I already created a folder called Mastermind. And inside of this folder, I have 3 files. One is called main, one is called settings, the last one is called sprites. I opened it up all over here. So in the main file, we import Pygame. I just typed in like a simple window just so we can get started. We import Pygame, import everything from the settings and from the sprites, create a class for the game, constructor, which creates a window. This width and the height is defined on the settings here. We're going to define that in a second. We add a title, also the title will be in there, a clock, and then we have a run function, which will have a self.playing, and then a while loop in here while this is playing. We call the clock.tick, pass the FPS, self.events, self.draw. Okay, these two functions are defining here. We're not going to have an update for this game because it doesn't really need to update. All the updates we're going to be doing is going to be on the events, basically. So every time we click or every time we press the enter key, we're going to update the game. The draw function simply fills the screen with the background color and then flip the display. And then the events, just a simple event to check if we are closing the window. Down here, we create an instance of the game class, put into a while loop, and then in here we call game.new, which I do not have in here. I'm just going to define that now. Just going to pass it. This is just going to be to create a new game once we finish, and then we call the run function, and it keeps the game loop active. Now moving on to the sprites. In the sprites I have nothing. I'm just importing Pygame and then everything from the settings. And then on the settings file, I'm going to actually put it on the side here. On the settings file, we're importing Pygame. We don't need this OS in there. And then we have a few colors defined in here. We're going to need a few more colors in there. Actually, I'm going to change those colors because they're going to be slightly different. So I'm just going to copy from the other codes. If you just need to pause the video in here, you can just copy all of this code in there. So these are just defining all the colors. We have dark gray, light gray, all the colors that we're going to be using. Okay. Once you copied all these colors, the next thing we want to do is to just create a colors list or a tuple. And we're just going to place all the colors in this tuple in order which they appear on the bottom of our window. Okay, so these are just the colors, the sequence of colors that they appear in here. You can change that sequence if you like, it doesn't really matter the order that you put them in here. Right, moving on, we're going to do some game settings. And here we're going to have a variable for the rows. So that is how many rows we're going to have. And also the columns is going to have 13. I'm going to show you in a second why are those numbers. And then another variable, another constant for the amount of colors. That's going to be 8. So basically this is, you can actually change this. So if you don't want to have all the colors, you can put 6, for example, in here, and the code will be only generated on the first 6 colors that you have in here. So it's a bit easier, I guess. Okay. Now let me just show you this because I'm just dividing this in a grid. Okay, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rows, or in this case columns. I guess this should be columns. And then we have 13 down. Okay, so 10 is our attempts in here, and then 11 with that one on the top, 12, 13. Okay, I'm just dividing this into a grid to squares just to make it easier for us when we place all of these circles on the screen. Right, the next thing in here is we're going to just calculate the width and the height of our window. So the width is just those rows times tile size, which I did not define yet. So tile size, I'm going to just define this in here. So the tile size is just the size of each of those squares. I'm going to just use 60 for now, but you can increase that if you wanted bigger tiles. So rows times tile size, and then we're just going to put a +1 in here just to add one more pixel to the right so we can see the last row. And then the height is the same, but with the columns times tile size, And then we also have the FPS, which is 60, and then the title here, which is gonna be Mastermind. Okay. I believe I don't need anything else on this settings file. Right now, if you already copy all of this, we should have the width and the height, the title and the FPS all defined in here. So if we run this, let's see, this should be white, not wild. That's it. Right, the next thing to do is we're going to go to our sprite. I'm gonna actually close the settings in here now because we're not gonna really use that anymore, I believe. We're gonna go into our sprite file and we're going to create a board class. So we're gonna draw all the board elements. Okay, so let's create a board class, which will take a constructor, and we're just going to pass this constructor for now, because the first thing I want to draw is I want to create a function here to draw the grid, to draw the board. But the first thing I want to put it in here is to draw the grid so we can see each of the squares. Okay, so to draw this grid, we simply do a for loop in range of 0 to the width, skipping by tile size. So this is the 3 for loop, so it goes from 0 all the way to the width, and we skip by tile size. And then we also do another for loop. This should be range in here, in a range of 0 height, so now we're going down, and also skipping by tile size. And we're just going to draw a line. Okay, we will draw that on the screen, which will come from here. Okay, so parameter in there for the screen, and then we pass that parameter in here, and we're going to just use light gray for now. And this lines is gonna be x0 and then x height. Okay, so it's gonna draw 2 points at this coordinate from x to 0. So in the x coordinate and 0 on the y, and it's going to draw another point on the x coordinate from this and all the way down to the height, and then it's going to draw a line between those 2 points. Okay, so Control D to duplicate that, and in here we're just going to do the opposite, so 0 and y, and then width and y. Let's go back to the main. I'm gonna put the sprites on the side here actually, so we can see both of those files. And on the main, let's just do on the new class in here, let's create a board instance variable and create an object of the boards. And then down here on the draw function, in between the fill color and the flip, so you need to put it between those two. Okay, we can't put it before or after, otherwise it's not going to show on your screen. In here we're going to call self.boards.draw, and we pass our screen, and then just run that, and there we go, we see that grid. Okay, so we have 5 columns and then 13 rows down. The next thing I want to do is I want to create some surfaces. Okay, because in the actual app in here we have a surface just for this part here, and then we have a surface for this whole bit in here, and then I believe we have a surface for this side here. It's just a bit easier to create surfaces, and then we blitz all of these points into those surfaces, and then we blitz the surface into the screen. To create those surfaces, and we're going to be creating them at the initializer in here, so the constructor. Okay, so the first one is gonna be the pins surface. So that is the one in the center where we place the colored pins. Okay, so we create a surface, pygame.surface, and the size of this is going to be 4 across by 11. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 rows or 4 columns across, and then we have 11. So 10 is the attempt, and then one of them here at the top is the secret code. And those ones we just have to times them by tile size. Okay, times tile size for both of them. And we're also just going to fill that surface with the background color, because that's the same color as the background. Now we'll create another surface. So it's going to be the clues surface. Okay, Pygame.surface. And the size in here is going to be, that's this one here. So it's just one column by 10 or 11 in this case, because we're going to count this top one here, although there's nothing on it, but we still going to count this one here to leave it empty. Okay, so that should be just 1 times tile size, that is just tile size, and then 11 times tile size. Okay, and again, we're just going to fill that with a color, the fill with the background color. I did something here. I think I put an extra thing in there. Okay, that's it. Now the last surface we're gonna do is the color selection surface. Okay, so it's where we select our colors. So surface, it's gonna be this one down here. Okay, so it is 1, 2, 3, 4 across, and then 2 rows down. So that is basically 4 and 2, and then we just times those by tile size. Just note that all of the surfaces, they have a extra 2-point sign. Okay, so the surface take only one argument, which is a tuple containing the width and the height of the surface that we want to create. Okay, let's just fill this with a light gray color just to be a bit different from the normal one. Right, and then the next thing in the constructor is we're going to create 3 lists. So the color selection board pins, the board clues. Okay, so these lists here, they're gonna work to save the objects that we have on our game. Okay, so the board's pins, for example, is this section here. So every time I place a pen in here, it will add to this list to be able to draw it. The color selection is only those ones down here, so it only saves one of each. And then every time we press the enter key, it goes to the next line. If we have any color on the feedback in here, then it will be added to this clues list. Right, let's just draw those surfaces. So we're gonna keep the grid at the bottom of everything, so we draw everything on top of that grid. Let's just blitz those surfaces to the screen. We're not gonna be able to see much, but let's blitz those. So the pin surface we'll start at 0, 0, which is the top left corner here. Okay, so that is this one here. So starts at 0, 0. And then we have the clue surface, which is going to be this one here. So it starts at 0 on the Y, right? Because it doesn't start anywhere down. But the X, we need to start at this point here. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. So 4 tile sizes is where we start the X. So the Y is still 0, but then the X is going to be 4 tile size. And then the last one is the color selection, which is this one down here. So it starts at 0, right? So it starts at this point over here, but on the X, okay, so we can leave the 0 in there, but the Y is gonna be 11 down. Okay, so we have 10 of the temps plus 1 in here, so that starts at 11 on the Y. So we keep 0 on this one, and then this one is gonna be 11. If we run this now, we get an error. Why did we get an error? Screen the blitz, first argument. Oh, okay, I put the lists in here. No, in this one. This one is to be the color selection surface. Okay, if I run that, so this is what we see. We don't see the other surfaces just because we didn't put any color, but we can see this one down here. Let me show you what this looks like. I'm just gonna put reds for this one, and then white for this one. Okay, this is what it looks like. Okay, so we have those three surfaces. Sorry, when I said I put the grid at the bottom, is to actually draw the grid on top of everything, not on the bottom of everything, so we can see the grid on top of everything. So you see here, this first surface, okay, is this one here for all the pins. The second surface is in red, it's for the clues on the side. You can compare that to the actual code in here, you see, so the clues, and then the one down there is for the colors. Okay? Right, we just go back the way it was before. And the next thing to do in here, I think we're gonna create the pins class so we can add the pins to our game. So we're gonna just go on the top here. We're going to create a class called pin. So it's each of those round pins or the colored pins. We'll have a constructor in the parameters in here. It's gonna have to take an X and Y, so position where we want to draw this pin. And also we're gonna take a color, which is going to default to none. So the default none is gonna be just a gray color. That's because this ones here, you see, they don't have a default, they don't have a color, sorry. This one's down here, they will start with a color. And then every time we place one here, we're kind of just changing this pin at this location. We're changing it to a color. Right, and then the last parameter in here is gonna be revealed, which is gonna be equals to true as a default. Review, it means this ones, they are all revealed. So every time we place one, they're all revealed. But these ones on the top in here, they are not revealed. So the secret code is gonna be there, but it's just gonna be hidden. So whenever we draw them, if they are reviewed, we draw the actual color. If they are not reviewed, we just draw this shape on top. Now here we'll just create this self.x, self.y, color equals the color, and then reviewed equals reviewed. Then in the pins, we're going to define a function called draw, which takes a screen. We have to calculate the center of that circle. And to do this, it's just gonna be a little bit of maths in here involved. And we're gonna create a variable called center, which is the self.x plus brackets, tile size divided by 2, and then self.y plus brackets, tile size divided by 2. Okay? So we're just calculating the center of the circle. So we take the self.x, which is usually on the top of a square, and we're taking the self.x, right? And then we add tile size divided by 2. So on the x would be in the middle here, and then for the y, tile size divided by 2, that's gonna be here. So we're gonna get the center of each of these tiles, because we need to, the circles, they draw from the center out. It's not like the rectangles or squares that they draw from top left to top right, to bottom right, and they draw a rectangle. The circle is different, it draws from the center out. Now, we need some if statements in here. So if the self.color is not none, that means we're showing a color, and self.revealed, okay? So that means we're showing that pin, we're showing that color. We want to simply draw a circle at the screen. And the next argument here is the color. And what am I doing is, because I don't know if you can actually see it, but each of these squares here, each of these pins, the circles, they have a little shadow behind it. Can you see? So the red has a little dark red shadow. The green has a little dark green shadow. The blue has a little blue shadow. Let me remove those shadows so you can see the difference. Okay. So this has the shadows on it. Now I'm gonna run it again, and this will not have the shadows on it. It's a bit hard to actually see what's happening, but there is a slightly difference in there. I feel like it just looks a little bit better. So for that, we're actually drawing two circles. So we're drawing one circle behind it, which is a bit darker than the front circle, and then the other circle on the top. So if I remove the bright circle, this is what it looks like. So it's just a bit of a dark shade of each of the colors. And for that, we're just gonna do a dynamic way to pick the actual color and then make it a dark shade of that color, instead of coming in here and putting a dark green, dark blue, dark red. So there's just going to be too many colors in there. So we want to take this color. So for example, red is going to take the color in here and it's going to create a darker shade of that color. And to do this, we're going to create a tuple in here. We're going to do x times 0.3. I'm going to explain this in a bit. For x and self.color. So the self.color, they have 3 arguments inside. Okay, so that's going to be this in here. 1, 2, 3. So we're just creating a new tuple in here. And we're taking each color, so for x and that, and this tuple, just doing a for loop. And then we times that x by 0.3. That is just gonna bring the shade of the color down. So we're gonna create a darker shade of each of those colors. So that's the color done in there. The next argument in here is we also wanted to put a little bit lower from the center, right? So to make this dynamic as well, we're going to create another tuple in here. And then we're going to do x plus 1 for x in center. So the center here, again, is a tuple. So it looks something like this, for example. I'm just giving an example. So this is the center of our circle. And it's just taking each of those and it's adding 1 pixel to it when we blit it, okay? I'm going to demonstrate this with more pixels so you can see what happens. But 1, I find it's enough. You can put it more if you want to like a nicer shadow. And then the last argument in here is the radius of the circle, okay? So this is how we create a circle in Pygame. Pass the screen, pass a color, pass a tuple containing the center, and then the radius. Let's create those pins so we can run it and see what it looks like. In the boards, just before the draw function, let's just create a function in here that will create the selection pins. And then this function is we're going to create a color index which starts at 0. And in here we just literally have to, we want to add this, all of this in here. So we're going to pick each color from that list of colors that we create in the settings file and then just draw them accordingly like that. We'll create this index color that is to pick. It's going to be to pick from these ones here. Okay, so we're going to do for y in range of 2 because there's only 2 columns, 2 rows, and then for x in range of 4. Okay, again, we have 1, 2 rows and then 1, 2, 3, 4 columns. Down here, we're gonna do if the color index is less than the amount of colors. Okay, so that's why we put this variable in here, because if you want, you can change that to make the game a bit easier if you like. So if the color index is actually less than the amount of colors, we want to take that list that we created, so the color selection list, this one here, right? And we want to append a pin object to it. Our pin object takes a x and y, so that's the x and y from the for loop in here. We will just time those by tile size so they're in the correct places. And he also takes a color and a boolean saying if it's revealed or not. The revealed, it will be revealed because all of this down here, they're all revealed, so we don't need to put anything on the color, on the revealed parameter. But the color is default to none, so we do have to pass in the color in there. So we're gonna take that colors list at the color index, okay? So we're just taking this list, square brackets, and then the color index. So the first time round, it will pick red, and then we want to actually do plus equals 1, and then it will increase this to 1. Then the second round is gonna pick green, third round is going to pick blue, and then so on until the color index is the same as the amount of color. So when it reaches 8, it will not do this. Instead, it will just break out of the loop. And let's just call this function, so create pins. We'll just call them in the top here. And then let's also draw them into the screen. So before we draw all the surfaces, we need to draw them at the color selection surface. Okay, so we're going to do a for pin and self.color selection. So each of the pins in this list here, and we're just gonna do pin.draw. Okay, and we're going to draw not in the screen this time. So we're gonna draw at the color selection surface. So we draw them all in the surface, then we draw the surface into the screen. Now let me run this and see what happens. Right, this is what we get. Okay, so down here we have the shades. Okay, so this one here. Okay, so as I said before, so this, we're just adding 1 to it. If I add 10 to it, for example, that's just gonna move further down to the right. So that's where I'm putting the shadow. Okay, let me create the second one. So we're going back to the class pin and to the draw function. Okay, so just under the shading here, let's just create the second circle in here. Okay, so pygame.draw.circle, then you're gonna be able to see a bit better. Passing the screen. In this case in here, we're just gonna pass in the color as usual, the center and the radius, which is 15. Now when we run this, this is what you get. Okay, so we have the actual, this one here, this one down here is at the center of the square, and then we have the shades on the side a little bit. Okay, so if you put a greater number here, it's gonna keep going down, right? So if I put 20, for example, it's just gonna keep going down. So you can even, let's try 5. You see, it's a bit too much. I feel like I would use like 1. 1 looks good. Even let's try 2. 2 looks good too. So you can either use 1 or 2. We could even, let me try if I put like -10, for example, then it's gonna go up. If you want a different shade, if you want the shades to go to the top left, you can do that as well. It looks like the light's coming from down here. I will just keep on 1 for now. Okay, so now that we have those pins drawn down there already, the selection pins, let's just draw the rest of this stuff in the board. Okay, let's do the actual pins in the middle where we're gonna be placing them. So we're gonna go back to our class, to our board class. We're gonna just define a new function here called create pins. And this function will basically just put all the pins in place, but they will have a non-color, and they will be reviewed, doesn't matter, but they will have a non-color. So that means it's gonna just show a little red dot like that in the dark. It looks like it's empty. Okay, so for this we will do for row in a range of 11, because we have 11 rows or columns in this case. Actually, let's call this column then. For column, we'll create a, no, sorry, this is actually rows. It's rows down, so it's 11 down. We'll create a temporary row, which is equals to just an empty list, just temporary. And then we do for column in a range of 4, and then we do temp row dot append. We're going to append an empty pin basically. So this is column style size and then row times style size. Okay, we don't put anything on the color, so it's gonna be just when we draw in here, if there's no color, then we're gonna draw a smaller circle. And then at the end here, we just have to append to the board pin. Append temp row. You could do this in a one line if you wanted to as well. You could have done so this whole thing in here, you can substitute, you can do self.boards. It's gonna be a 2D list, right? We want to append a pin at column times style size, row times style size, for column in range of 4, and then outside for row in range of 11. So basically this line here will do this exact same thing as all of this, and you wouldn't need to create this empty list in there. Okay, just trying to make it a bit more simpler to understand by doing for loops like this. Right, let's just code this in here, self.create selection pins. And if we run this, I believe we're not going to see anything because we need to come back in here on the pen, on the draw function. We just have to draw the pins that don't have a color, basically. We're just going to put an else in here just for now. So this else, we want to draw pygame.draw.circle into the screen. And this is going to be, we're going to use the dark brown color. And then the next thing in here is the center. And then it's going to be a bit smaller. So here we're using 15 as the radius. The empty ones we're going to use 10. Now go back to the boards in the draw function. So for row and self.board pins, because that's a 2D list now. Okay, so we have 2 loops. So that creates a 2D list. So we need to go for each row in the board pins, and then for each pin in the row, then we do pin.draw. And where do we have to draw this? If you guess the pin surface, you got it right. Self.pins surface. Right, so let me run this and see. And nothing happens. We are creating the pins. Adding, we are not calling this, right? We call this function twice. It should be create pins in here. Okay, run that again. There we go. We have all of the pins in there. The top one here doesn't matter because we're gonna substitute that with the secret codes later. Okay, so I think the next thing to do now is to draw the clues on the side here. Okay, so for that, we're not going to be using this pin class just because the clues will be drawn slightly different because they need to be a bit smaller and they have red and white. So we're just going to create another class in here, which is going to be called clue pin, but we're still going to take that pin class as a parent. Okay, it's just because we're going to be using the constructor from this, but we're just going to draw a bit different. It's just easier than adding a bunch of if statements in here to see if it's a clue pin or if it's not. Just create another class and then just define the draw function again. So in here, we're just going to copy this center, but instead of dividing by 2, we're going to divide by 2.5. That's because we are not finding the center of this tile. We need to find like this quarter, or it's not even a quarter, it's a bit even less, a bit more than a quarter of the tile. So that's why we're dividing by 2.5. I tested with other numbers and this was just the best number that I found it for the center of each of the pins. Okay. And then in here, if self.color is not none, then we want to draw a circle. It's the screen that we pass in there. And self.color. And then this is going to be 6 for the radius. And then else, if there is a color, then we want to pygame.draw circle screen. Sorry, this one is if there is a color, then we actually draw the actual color. Missing something here. What am I missing here? Oh, I'm missing the center. And then this one is if there's no color. So it's going to be actually the same as this guy here. But it's just going to be 5 there. So we just want to have a slightly smaller than this because this one is smaller than this. So we just make it a little bit kind of a proportion. Okay, and then we're using the dark brown color. Now that we have this child class of pin, we can go back to our board class and let's just define a function called create clues. Okay, in this create clues, we're gonna need 3 for loops in there. Let me just add the for loops in here and then I'll explain it. So for I in range of 11, we'll create a temporary row, and then for row in range of 2, or column in range of 2. So let me explain this. This first for loop in here that goes in range of 11, it's for each of the rows in here. So it goes, we're not selecting the first one, so that's why actually we have to go from 1 to 11. Okay, so it goes from the first one here all the way to 11. And then these 2 for loops in here is to add each of those inside of each of those squares. Okay, so basically just going for each of the squares and then for each of the circles. Okay, still gonna be a 2D list, but we just have to do this multiple times. Right, in here, we're going to add to the temp row clue pin instance object. Okay, so for the X, we're gonna do column times, and then we're gonna put brackets, tile size integer divided by 4, exit of 1 bracket, comma, and then we do brackets again, row times brackets again, tile size divided by 4, exit out of 2 brackets with a plus I times tile size, and then in here should have 2 brackets to close it. Okay, this is just a little bit of math to get this in the correct places. Okay, so we're adding the columns, they're the same, but then on the Y in here, when we go down the rows, we need to add the I in there times tile size, because for every 4 of this, we need to move 1 down. I hope this makes a little bit of sense, but yeah, trust me, I had to do some tests to get all of this math correctly in there. Now let's just draw them into the screen. Oh, actually, I forgot the last thing we want to do in here is to just add to the board clue. We want to append a temporary row. So we append that outside of this for loop, okay, but it's still inside of this one here. Now let's just code this in here, self.create clues, and then on the draw function, we will just go down here and then for row in self.board clue, and then for pin in a row. So again, it's gonna be the same. We're going through all the rows and then through all the pins, and then we do pin.draw. And if you guess correctly, it's in the clues surface. Okay, let me just put some comments in here. Draw clue pins, and then we draw pins, and then this one is draw the placeholder for the colored pins. Now let's see if we run this. Okay, there we go. We have all the ones in the middle, we have the clues on the side here in the correct places, and we have the colored pins down here. The next step now is to do the event. So let's go to our main file here, okay, where we have the game class, and let's just start typing in some events in here to check the mouse to click to select the color, basically. I think we're gonna have to jump into the sprites. So I'm gonna put these sprites on the side here. We're gonna have to jump into these sprites to create some functions in the board in here to select the correct color and all of that, okay? So right here on the events, after we check if we're closing the window, we're going to do an elif, and then we're gonna check for the event type if it's equals to Pygame dot mouse button down, and also let's just check for the event button as well. So button 1 is the left click, button 2 I think it's right click, and 3 is middle click, or 2 is middle and 3 is right, I can't remember. We'll create 2 variables in here for our mouse position. Whenever we click on the screen, we want to capture that mouse position. We use event.pos. And then we want to first create a variable in the new function here called self.color, which is going to initialize as none. So that's going to be the color that we are selecting. Okay, so every time we click on a color, it will select that specific color. So then we can place it. Okay, so you just need to keep track of which color we are selecting it. So in here, the self.color, so whenever we click, we want to check if we're actually clicking on a color. So this is going to be the first function that we're going to have to create in our board class to select the color. So in here, we're going to call self.boards, and we're going to call this function select color. And that function will take 3 arguments. So for the mouse coordinates, mx, my, and also we're going to pass in the color, just because if we select red, for example, and then we click somewhere else, or we click in here, we still keep selecting the red color. So that's the idea. Okay, so we're gonna just pass in the color in there, because if we're not selecting any of the colors, then we'll just keep selecting the color that it was selected before. And then in the sprites in here, we're going to come down here. After the end of the file, after the draw function, I'm still in the board class, okay? So at the end here, we'll define if that function there, so select color. So I'm just defining this function here. And we know that it takes 3 arguments, so the mouse position, X and Y, and then the previous color. Okay, so that's the color that is selected at the moment. So now in here, we want to do for pen and self dot color selection. So we have all the pens in there, so all the colors basically. Let's do for color and self dot color selection. And then we want to do if color dot X is less, let's call this pen actually. So for pen, and then this is going to be easier. So if pen dot X is less than mx and less than the pen dot X plus style size. So basically we're just checking if we're clicking on the tile of that color. So for example, I don't need to click on the actual color. If I click on the side here, it'll still work as green. Or if I click on the side here, it'll still work as yellow. Okay, it's just a bit easier. So we check for the X, and we also need to check for the pen.y less than my. And then in this case, because we're drawing on the surface, we need to do my minus 11 times style size less than pen.y plus style size. This is just because we are drawing in a surface and we cannot get the actual mouse coordinate all the way down there, because otherwise it's not gonna match with the surface, okay? Because for example, this red color here, it's blitted at 0, 0 compared to the surface here. If we put 0, 0 on the screen, it will take us to this tile here, so we don't want that. Okay, so that's why we need to do this part here. Okay, colon at the end. So all of that, we just return pen dot color. And then if we go through all the pins and we are not selecting any of the pins, then we just return the previous color in there. So we just keep that previous color if we don't select any pin, or if we click on the same one. Right, so this should be working as intended now. So let's test this. So let's print self.color. Okay, I guess it will print the actual color. So if I click anywhere, it just prints none. If I click on red, then it prints that red color. Or blue, it prints the blue color. Black prints the black color, and so on. Okay, so this is working. If I click anywhere else, you see again, so if I select the red, which is this one here, and I select anywhere else, it keeps the red selected. That is just because then if we want to select the red and put in all of them, then we don't need to select every time the red and place it in there. So now in here, we're gonna have to create another function into our board to place the pen in the correct spot. So in here, if self.color is not none, then we want to do self.boards, and then we're going to create a new function called place pen in our board, and that will also take 3 arguments, okay, for the mouse position and the color that we want to place. Right, let's define that function. So place pen, it takes mouse coordinates and the color that we want to place. And this function here, we're going to go for pen and self.boards pin. There is one variable that I actually completely forgot to add on the board class in here. So at the top on the constructor of the board class, just at the top of everything, we'll create a function variable called self.tries, because that's the amount of tries that we have, right? So we're gonna have 10 attempts. So we want to take the pen at the board's pin at that self.tries. Is it 10 or 9 that I need to put? No, I think it's 10. So with that variable here, we're going to decrease. So every time we press the enter key to go to the next row, we're going to decrease that so it goes up on the rows. So we're gonna select the pins at this location, at this row, basically, because this board's pin is a 2D list. And if the pin.x is less than the mouse position, less than pin.x plus style size, so we're just gonna do something similar to this, but we're not gonna do this part here, basically. And pin.y less than mx less than pin.y plus style size. So we're just checking if our mouse coordinate is at the correct location. Where is it in which of those one in here of this, the row, the current row, basically. So in this case, it's gonna start at 10. It's gonna check for the row 10, which is the first one down here. And this bit here is gonna check which of those 4 squares we're clicking, so we can place the color accordingly. Then in here, we will just do pin.color equals to the color. And then we can just break out of this loop because we don't need to loop the other ones. So this should be working, I assume. Let's give this a try. So if we run this, we select a color. Yes, we can place a color. And note that we can only place on the first row, because that's the self.tries in here is 10. If I put this 8, for example, and I run this, I cannot put in the first row or in the second. Okay, I can only put this on the third row, because this is the index 8. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, I hope this makes a little bit of sense. It's gonna change this back to 10, so we start at the first row down there. Now the next thing we want to do in here is to do the event for pressing the enter key. So every time we completed a row, we press the enter key, and then it gives our feedback, and then it moves to the next row. Okay, so let's do that part for now. So we're gonna have a elif, so we're gonna check for the event type for pygame.key down, and then we also want to check if the events.key is equals to pygame.k_return. That's for the enter key. You can do space if you want as well. Okay, so k_space, that will check for the space bar. You can do that, or you can do even both. Events, not end, it should be or event.key. You can do for both of them if you want, or you can do any other key, basically. Right. So now it's the next function that we're going to be creating on our board class is to check if our row is full. Okay, we only want to go to the next row if we place all the pins. Let's say I put just 2, I press enter, I'm pressing enter, and it's not going to the next row. So the row needs to be full to go to the next row. So we're gonna do an if statement for boards, if self.boards, and then we're gonna create this function called check row. Okay, that's not gonna have anything on it. It's just gonna literally check the current row to see if it's all full. And then down here, we're going to define this function, check row. You can do for pen and self.boards, and then add that row tries at that current row that we are on now. And then if the pen.color is none, so if we find any pen in the current row that has a color none, we just return false. Okay, otherwise we just return true. So we go through all the pins in the row, and then if we find one that has a color none, then we return false because we haven't placed all of them. Otherwise, if we don't find any here, then we just return true. There's another way of doing this is you can just return straight away all pin. Well, let me do this on the top here. I'm just gonna comment this for now. I'm just gonna show you another way of doing this straight away. So we can just return all pin.color is not none for pen and self.boards, self.tries. Okay, so you can do like that as well. So this all function, it returns true if all of the conditions are true. Otherwise, it returns false if any of them. Okay, so if all pins.color is not none, so if all of the pins in the row is not none, then we return true. Otherwise, we return false. Okay, and then coming back in here, we can, let's just print true in there, and then If I press enter, let's do an else. We print false. If I press enter, it's sorry, it's not enter, it's space. If I press space, it returns false because we haven't filled the row. If we do fill the row, we press space, now it returns true. So we don't need any of that in there for now. I'm just gonna change this for the underscore return because I'm used to the return. If the row is full, then we want to check the clues, so do the clues and then also move to the next row. I'm gonna create a variable here called clues color list, and that's gonna be another function that we're gonna create on our boards, which is gonna be to check the clues. I guess we can do like that. It doesn't need any parameters in there. So this function that we're gonna create now, it will basically return a list of colors that we need to place on the clues on the side. Let's just create this function. I think will make a bit more sense. So in the boards, we create check, not blues, clues. We want to first create a function called color list, which equals, so not a function, a variable, which is just an empty list. And then we're going to do for I and code pen in enumerate self.boards pen 0. So now it's because we need to check the original secret code is going to be on the top here. So it's at the row 0. Okay, so that's why I'm checking it at the row 0. We're just checking for the color of the pen. We're just taking the pen from the code, from the secret code in here. That's why I call the code pen. And also we want to check the index of it. So we want to check both of it. We're going to create a variable called the none for color, and then for J and user pen. Okay, so then we're gonna go through all of the code pens, and also for each of the code pens we need to check all the user pens. If any of them match, then we know we have to place a white color. If any of them match and is also at the same index, then we place a red color. If you watched my Wordle tutorial, the function is very similar to when you type the letter and press enter, and then it checks the words with the correct word, and then it gives you yellow letter or green letter. So it's very similar to that function actually. Okay, so again, we loop through the code up here. For each of them, for the first one, we check each of the user colors. If any of them match this one, we place a white dot. If that match is the same index, so if it's 0 and then 0, then it would be a red dot. Okay, so we loop for the code, create a color called none, and then for J and user pen, and enumerate self.boards pen, and then self.tries, because that's the current row. We do if user pen dot color is equals to code pen dot color. So we're checking if the colors are the same. Then we do color equals white, and then if I is equals to J, so if they're same indexes, then we do color equals to red, and then we can just break in here because we don't need to check the other ones. Now go back into this here, so outside of the second for loop. If the color is not none, then we do colors list, so that list on the top there, dot append, we append that color to it. Okay, so only if it's not none. So if it's white or red, we append that color in the list. And then once we go through all the pens and all the user pens and all of that, we check, we add all the colors. We want to do colors list. We want to just do a dot sort. So it's just gonna sort them, so we have all the whites and the reds on the left side. So because otherwise, if we don't sort them, then it's gonna be kind of a bit easier, right? Because you're gonna see the first index is gonna have a red one in there. Then you know that the first one here is the corresponding in this, or the third one would be here. You know that green would be there. So that's why we just sort them to put all the non-colors to the right, and all of the colors that has colors, you just sort them. And then here we just want to return, because this returns something, we're saving to a list, so we just return this color list. Now going back to the main file, the next thing we want to do in here, we want to set those clues. So that's going to be another function. I don't know, it's a lot of functions that we're creating on the board. But it's just to make it more organized. So I want to have all the board stuff into our board class, all the game stuff into our game class, all the pin stuff into the pin class, just to be a bit more organized. So here we're gonna call self.boards.setClues. That's gonna be a function that we're gonna create now. And we're gonna pass in that color list, okay? So this is to actually set those clues in here, okay? This function is gonna be very small. We just define this set clues. It takes a color list, and then we're gonna do for color and pin in zip color list self.board clues dot self.tries -1. So this we're just the zip function. It will loop through those two lists at the same time, and each of those indexes, it will be saved in the color for the color list and then the pin for this for the current row. And then down here we just do pin.color equals to color. Okay, so we take that pin, the color of the pin, and then we place that color into it. Now I believe this is, we can test this. Let me run this. I'm gonna put actually we're not gonna be able to test because there's no, we didn't set the code yet. And we cannot go to the next line as well. Right, let's do that then. So actually let's set the code then. Let's create the code. In our board class, you can go on the top. Actually, let's just do on the bottom here. I'm going to define a function which call create code. That's going to generate the random code. Okay, so generate random code. And this is we're gonna create a variable called random codes, and we're gonna take a sample of the colors. I'm gonna explain this in a second. Colors, and 4 of them. So what this random.sample do, it takes a list, which is this list of colors here, and it takes 4 random options from this list, but they are samples, so they are only one of each. You will never get a repeated color. So if you want more, if you want to put 6, then it will generate a 6-digit code, right? So that's what the 4 is in there for, because we want 4 colors. And the random.sample selects only different options from the list. And then here we're gonna do for I and pin and enumerate self.board pins 0, because now we want to add the colors to the top here. Okay, we're going to do pin.color equals to random code I. Okay, so we loop through, we're gonna get this list because this returns a list as well. We want to also do pin.revealed equals to false because they are not gonna be revealed, right? And then we can just call this create function, right? And in the create code, right, at the constructor. So let me see if we run this. Okay, nothing's happening. I know we have to draw something here, but it's still yeah, it's because it's drawing this guy here, right? So in the draw function in the pin, we'll just go back in here. So before this else, we're gonna create an elif to see if not self.revealed. That means it's not revealed. Then we want to draw a pygame.draw.circle in the screen, and then we're gonna do light gray, we're gonna do center and 15, and then we're just gonna press Ctrl Command D to just duplicate that line, change this color to black, and then change, and then we do (3). This is just the width of, so if you don't add anything here, then it's gonna fill up the circle. If you add something here, it's gonna create a border around. So I'm gonna show you now. So if I run this now, yeah, it does that basically. So this is the black circle. If I don't put anything here and I run it, it will fill up the circle. This is just the width of the line. But we're doing 2, so we're just doing one on top of each other, so it looks something like that, just to differentiate a bit from these guys here. But now let me show you that this function here is working. So instead of doing pin.revealed false, we want to just comment that out. So we can see the code in there. So you see pink, green, orange, red. If I run this again, we get a different color every time. There we go. Different colors every time. Now, the next function we're going to create in here is still on the board class. We're going to define next round to call for the next round. Okay, and this function is very easy. We're just going to do self.tries minus equals 1, return self.tries less greater than 0. Okay, so this is just going to minus 1 from the self.tries, so we keep going up on the list, on the attempt, and then it's going to return a boolean here to see if either the tries are greater than 0. If it's greater than 0, that means we're still on the game. If it's not, that means it's game over, basically. So we want to check in here. Okay, so let's just test this. So we're gonna do any statements, but let's just test this first. So self.board.next round, right? So technically, if I place some colors in there and I press space bar, not space bar, now it's return key. There we go. It gave me that there's a red one. So that's correct in here. Now let's put, for example, green. Let's put the red on the do my strategy. The red in there because I know there's one red, and then the green. I press enter, it goes to the next row. Now there's a red and there's also green, but the green is not in the same place. So I know that the green is not here, so we know that the green is going to be there, right? That's my strategy. And I can't place anywhere else, just to show you. I can still place it here, I can't place it in here. And then if we press enter, then it goes to the next round and so on. Let's so this is working fine. Now the last things to do in here is just to do the end screen, basically. So if we find the color, we win, and if we don't find the color, you game over, basically. And also to draw this indicator, let's draw that indicator now. Actually, that will show which row, which is the current row that we're in. To draw that indicator, we're gonna draw that straight on the board class on the draw function. After we draw all the surfaces, just gonna make a comment in here, draw the green or the row indicator. And just to draw that, we're just gonna draw a simple rectangle in here in the screen. We're doing green for this at 0, and then tile size times self.tries. So you need to use that. And then 4, because it's going to be 4 tiles long, so 4 tiles, and then tile size in here. And it starts at the y value, so this is the x value of the rectangle, this is the y value of the rectangle. The y value is tile size times the tries, and then we go the size of it, so the width is 4 tile size because it's 4 across, and then 1 tile size long. Alright, so if I draw this now, if I run this, it's going on the top for some reason. I know I forgot something here. I want to put the width in here as well, so it doesn't fill up the green square. Why is it going on the top? Oh, this needs to be times self.tries, not plus self.tries. Okay, so 0 tile size times self.tries. Now we have that green indicator there. So if I fill this up in here, press enter, it goes to the next row. If I fill it, press enter, always go. If I press enter without filling it, I'm pressing enter, it's not going to the next row, only if it's filled. I think the last thing we need to do in here is to just check if we win, and also if we do, then we review the code, or even if we game over, then we want to review that code. So let's just create this review function. Down here on the board class, we're going to create a review function, review code, I guess you can call that. And that's going to be for pen and self.boards 0. So the first row of the boards, we just do pen.reviewed equals to true. So we just review all the pins. I need to uncomment this. I'm just leaving this commented for now, just so we can see what's the code, so we can test it. Right, and then now the last thing to do is to create another function in the board class. Well, actually, no, not in the board class. We're going to create that in the game class, because that's kind of like a game related. So just go down here after the event function, define a function called check win. So just going to check if we win. And then we're gonna actually, do we need to pass? Yeah, let's just pass in this color list. Is the color list from the clues color list. So it's this one here. We're gonna be passing inside of here as well. Yeah, because in here, this color list is the clues, right? So if this has all red inside, that means we win because we guessed all the code. So that's exactly what we're gonna be checking on this function here, the check win function. So in here, we're just gonna return straight away. I'm just gonna do this a bit quickly. So the length of the color list equals to 4, and all color equals to red for color in color list. Okay, so you could do this with a for loop as well. I'm just checking if all the colors in the color list here, so the clue list, they are all equals to red. This will return true. And also that color list needs to be the length of 4. Okay, so if it's not length of 4, that means we haven't discovered all the colors yet. Okay, so let's continue with this. This check win, we want to do that somewhere in here on the events. So we do all of this, and then let me just delete this part from here. We want to actually check in here. So if self.checkWin and then the close list color, then we're just gonna print. I'm not gonna do any text on any graphics. Basically, we're just gonna print E1, and then we're gonna do self.boards.review code because we want to review the code, and then that's it. And then here elif not self.boards next round. So if this next round here returns false, that means we try all of them. So it's less than 0. We tried all of them and we didn't win. Then we just print game over. And then we can also do self.boards.review code. Okay. All right, this tutorial is just getting very long already. Let's just quickly test this, see if it works. This is the color. I'm just gonna have a game over in here just to see. Okay, it still went to the top. But that's fine. If we press enter again, it will just mess up your code basically. We're just gonna quickly create an end screen here, which will let you press enter to start a new game as well. But let's just first try. So let's see, we do like that, and we're trying to guess the code, all of that. So red is fine. And then, okay, we guessed the code right. Black and orange. And that's it. All red, print E1. Okay. Now, the last thing just to finalize this, I want to create an end screen, which will let you press enter to play again. So just under the check win, we will create a end screen function, and we're just gonna create a while loop. Events equals to pygame.events.wait, just to wait in there. We're gonna wait for something to happen, for some input. If event.type is equals to pygame. So let's just copy this bit in here. Elif events.type equals pygame, which actually just gonna copy this. If we press the return key, the enter key, then we just do self.playing equals to false, and then we return, and then we do self.draw in here, just so we draw everything, so we keep seeing the updates. Do we actually need to do this? We might not even need to do this bit in here. Let's try like that. And then to call this function here, we actually want to call it, so in here we press enter, it stops playing. So then it's gonna get out of this, and it's gonna, because there is a while loop in here, it's gonna go to the new function again, right? It's gonna do new, it's gonna create a new board, it's gonna create the color, it's gonna go to none, and then it's gonna execute the run function again, which the self.playing will go back to true. So this function here, we want to call that right here, self.endScreen, and also why not call in here as well. So we try that, and then we managed to get the code right, yellow and green, and it says E1, and then I can't do anything else in here. Okay, I can't select colors, I can't place, I can't do anything. If I press enter again, it randomized the code again, and the game starts again. Now let's just quickly try the game over. And when I press enter, that's it. It says game over. It's actually, we're not drawing here, so it doesn't go to the next round. And I can't do anything else in here. I can move the screen, I can close it. If I press enter, it gives me a new code and the game starts over. And just the last thing in here, just uncomment this so you don't see what's the code. And let's just quickly try to play this to see if we can guess it. So we know there's a red. We know there's a red, which is on the correct place, but there's no green. Now there's a blue and a red on the correct place. Now there's a yellow as well, so we know the red is there. The blue is not there. The yellow is not either here or here, so it should be there. And then let's go with pink. Okay, there's no pink, but there is a yellow, red, and a blue in there. Now orange, there's no orange. Yellow, blue, and black. Oh, it's always the last color. Blue, yellow, and white. Right, so that's why we actually have to draw this bit in here. I just realized that, because otherwise it's not gonna review your colors. Okay? So I'm just gonna do one more test, just very quickly, just to make sure that this is all working. Just for the sake of the test, I'm going to actually, I want to print this one here. Let's just print random codes. So we have the colors in there. So we know it's gonna be, so I'm just gonna try one in here like that, press enter. The first color is 210 and 210, that is pink. And then we have 200, 200, 200, 200, that is white. Then we have 30, 30, 30, that's black. And then 0, 210 in the middle, that is green. So that is actually the color in there. I press it, okay, now it reviews and it says you won. Okay guys, right, I think that's gonna be it for this video, this tutorial. I really hope you enjoyed it and that you understood what's happening. If you don't understand something, just leave me a comment down below. And if you like this video and you want to support the channel, just click on the subscribe button and give the video a like. I would really appreciate it. Alright, I will see you guys on the next video.